this morning we are going to narrow it down. We are starting with a big global picture, and then we narrow it down to geopolitics in the Caucasus area. We are about to begin with a discussion, a conversation between two global leaders, President Sargsyan and the former Prime Minister of Italy, who also happened to be the Commissioner, the President of the EU Commission a few years back. So, Mr. President, we are going, I think, about to connect with Romanò Prodi. Wonderful. Maybe you'll come to the election. And we are looking forward to this conversation between the two of you.
I am connected. I am connected, President.
Yes. Good morning, Mr. President.
How are you?
I'm very well. Nothing has changed since 2 weeks that we met in Rome.
Yes.
And I would like to continue our discussions that we started 2 weeks ago in Rome about the past and the future.
Oh, we have to solve all the problems of the world.
Yeah. Well, let's try. Let's try it, Mr. President. Of course.
No, really, President, I am very happy to join you in our discussion. Let us be frank and free and happy.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Of course, our audience knows in detail your life and experience, and I would like to start our discussions. Maybe we can structure in a form the last 30 years of the world, the last 30 years of Europe, and maybe our region, and what's going to happen in the future. Your career as a minister, then prime minister, then the president of European Commission was sort of at the beginning of these 30 years, when the world has changed from bipolar world to one polar. There was even a famous historian saying that this is the end of the history, that nothing will change tomorrow. Well, but since the world is so dynamic, of course, there are no final defeats, there are no final victories, everything is in motion. But my first question will be, when you were starting your political career, Europe and the world that you were entering and you were hoping to have, did it realize, or eventually we got somewhere else rather than what we were planning?
Oh, look, nothing happened as we have planned. This is clear. Look, let us start from the fall of the Soviet Union, you know. You mentioned correctly the book, the article, the end of the history. You know, everybody was telling, look, we are now entering in the American century. There will be no problem for one side. The U.S. will be in command, and so secular peace, like that. And step by step, things changed. And of course, the new challenge is called China, totally different from the challenge of the Soviet Union. The challenge of the Soviet Union was mainly or only military. There was no challenge in the term of economic challenge, or let's say even the technological challenge was limited to very few fields, mainly linked to the military aspect. And then things developed in a very different way, you know. Symbolically, I started to learn this in the 80s when I was president of Italian public-owned conglomerate IRI, and we were building in the early 80s a seamless pipe plant in Soviet Union in Volgograd, Volsky, close to Volgograd. And then 2 years later, the Chinese government asked us to build a twin plant. And the Chinese plant was finished, and we used the young Chinese boys to finish the Soviet plant. And so I learned how China was dedicated to the economic development, to building an industrial frame and totally different from the previous challenge. Clearly, nobody of us would have never thought that China could have a total continuity of development. Continuity has been the real surprise. And, the challenge is total, because when I was meeting the Chinese president or Chinese prime minister from every year from 1996 to 2028, every year I met them, there was always on the Chinese side the idea that not that China could be democratic, but there was some sort of recognition of the importance of the democratic systems. But China grows, and the new wave of President Xi, who, taking note of the progress, doesn't have the same, let's say, respect for the democratic system. And the challenge is, look, I deliver. You democratic countries are slow to deliver, and so the world will come to me. And the changes are really, there is an increase of the sense of authority, authoritarian government in the world, and the change, the challenge now is both economic and political. So it's not an unexpected view.
It's interesting, Mr. President. You unexpected, yes, probably 30 years ago it was difficult to imagine that China will be where it is today.
Yes.
Yes. Of course, the success of China is a result of many factors. It's the Chinese system to have a stable governmental structures, have a vision, have a program, to have continuity in power. But would you agree with me that current China is also a result of the sort of a indirect support from Europe, and especially from United States, when a lot of European and American businesses going after bigger market, cheaper workforce, moved their productions from Europe and America to China. While moving there, they also took with them also a lot of know-how. And of course, Chinese are Chinese. The moment you give them your hand, you are a member of the family. So that technology became the basis of the Chinese technology. Do you agree that both Europe and America had their contribution in growth of China?
Yes, but it was unavoidable.
It was unavoidable.
It was the logic of the market system, and the political consequence came too late to understand them. It was too late, and what was underestimated was the technological progress of China. China was reputed to be simply a low-cost supplier, but it was inside China that there was the change. They were able to imitate in the first stage, and then to produce their own economy. And now, it's quite interesting, your question, because now we are in a full fighting between US and China. But, while in high tech or fields linked to the military, say, chapter, you have, a severe control. trade in normal goods is going on, like in the past. You have now a terrible tension between the US and China, but in Los Angeles, in the Californian harbor, there are difficulties to receive the high number of containers for the Christmas demand. So your question is correct, but it was part of our system to exploit all the best occasions in order to develop the economy. It was a consequence, the only unexpected, let's say, unexpected event was the quick pick up of the technology on the Chinese side.
Yes. Since we are speaking about the past, I would like to ask another question. That's the relations of European Union, let's say, with Russia. I mean, we go back early 90s, even discussions were quite intense. Russia was changing, and even at the specific moment, there was an offer from the Russian side to have deeper relations with NATO. But eventually, we ended up with sanctions from Europe towards Russia. And then eventually, we ended up with anti-sanctions as well from Russia to Europe, and specifically in specific sectors like food. And I'm raising this question because, Mr. President, you're also the Prime Minister of Italy, and Italian businesses that were, especially in the food sector, I think suffered quite a lot because of these anti-sanctions. But again, the dynamism of the quantum world has changed the situation. You see, if you look today on Russia, on that sector, Russia was a country, and I don't want to quote any numbers here, that was importing huge volumes of beef. I mean, Russia and Kazakhstan, Australia, Canada, America are, by their nature, should have been the leaders of the world of beef production. But Russia was importing big part of its beef. Russia was importing wheat or grain. Russia was importing other agricultural food. But because of the anti-sanctions, that helped Russia to develop its own sectors of agriculture. As far as I saw recently, Russia has become the biggest exporter of wheat in the world again. And it's importing less and less of beef, or maybe in specific types of it. So the question is, did the sanctions or anti-sanctions, do they work or not?
I do remember, as you mentioned, the moments in which there was a NATO-Russia meeting, and the agreement, the relations were very strong and very friendly. I ended my job in the European Commission as president in 2005, and in the last press conference with Putin, a newsman, a journalist, asked us, will Russia be member of European Union? Can you believe that? Because the situation of relation was so good, and I do remember Putin telling me, I shall never send 1 cubic meter of gas to China because I am linked to Europe. But the situation has deteriorated because of the international tensions, and this is a part of let's say, the big challenge we mentioned before between China and the United States. And in my opinion, the great mistake was to abandon Russia. So my answer to your question is very simple. Step by step, Europe ended to make an autonomous policy vis-à-vis Russia. And I wrote also about this, quite a few articles, telling that the sanctions were were adopted by US, followed by Europe, but the damage was only on the European side, because we are trading with Russia and we are in the border with Russia. But after the description of the split of the world I did you before, I can argue that this is only the consequence of this split, and there are no other explanation, and you mentioned the damage on the trade of my country. In this moment, Italian exports are going very well, but Russia is a lost market. We don't, our exports are decreasing, and the problems are on the table. But, and look, you mentioned the sanctions. The sanctions are damaging people, not governments. But this is a normal consequence of sanctions. Look, it's difficult to me, but to anybody, to answer to your last question. Which are the perspectives? Yeah. In my opinion, we must have some sort of new wave. I don't say general agreement, but calming down of the tensions, because as you told, there is no interest on the Western side to increase the situation. I do expect some improving of the relation. I am not pessimist, because now is not our interest and no Russian interest.
Well, thank you again. The last question from the past is Europe. Brexit, if you can just describe it in a short form, has it made Europe stronger or weaker?
Weaker, but more connected. Look, the concept of Europe on the British side was only a trade area. And honestly, during my commission, I was blamed by some people in Europe because I opened the Union, enlarged to many Eastern countries. But I tell you, I was president of the European Commission at 15 and 25, and the real problems were only for the different strategy of UK. So I am sorry that the UK went out, but I understand that the next European, the progress on the economic cooperation in Europe, next generation EU, it was possible only because UK, only because of Brexit. Otherwise, we couldn't have this stronger progress in the economic Europe. Politically, we didn't make the same progress, and so we have difficulties to develop common defense, a common foreign policy, and the result is that in Libya, that is absolutely close to Europe, in Libya, the command is shared between Turkey and Russia, and Europe is a giant, a fantastic economic giant, but still divided in foreign policy.
Yeah. Well, Mr. President, we spoke about the past. Let's try to speak about today and about future. What we see today as you mentioned it truly, the rise of China. But this world is different not only because of the rise of China, it's different also because there is the rise of the so-called middle powers. Countries like India, countries like Turkey, Brazil, and others, they are having more and more impact on global geopolitics. And I would add here also the rise of small. Because when you look at the current world, which is completely different than 30 years ago. If 30 years ago I would tell the audience that United Arab Emirates will send a satellite to Mars, you will all smile. But now it's a reality. So there is a rise of small. And I would say that there's a rise of small and smart. Well, I call smart those countries that know their strength, and they know how to use that strength in order to make themselves important. And the examples of those type of countries, there are a lot of them, starting from Singapore, Israel, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, and I hope that Armenia will join that club, or is joining that club, too in the future, to be small but smart and important. So my question is, on one side, we don't have single polar world, and we have multipolar, we have middle strength, middle power countries rising, even the small ones rising. On the other side, events like withdrawal of American and NATO forces from Afghanistan, or the events of last year in Caucasus, the war between Armenia, Azerbaijan, and behind Azerbaijan was clearly a NATO member country like Turkey. So where are we heading, Mr. President? Both globally, and also I would like to hear your opinion about our region, if you would like to comment on that as well.
Look, let us not confuse the economic rise and also, let's say, the global rise of middle power. But because of the tension I described it before, they are divided, you know. They simply become, are obliged to choose. So it's true what you were telling, that India, Brazil, and so on, they grow in power. But every country chooses whether to be on one, is obliged in some way to choose, whether to be with China or United States. This is what I mean. Clearly, economic progress, the necessity for raw materials, energy, spread the wealth, the intelligence, the technology everywhere in the world. But you also baptize the country. You are pro-Chinese or pro-American, because the two players are working in order to, let's say, to capture, to conquer the alliance of most part of the country. So you have Pakistan with China, India more with the United States, and so on and so on. So you are correct telling that these powers are rising, but not in autonomy, not in autonomy. The world is more divided than before, and you have to choose. Look at Europe. We were in very good agreement, as you mentioned, with Russia and the United States together. Now, now this is more and more difficult, you know, and we adopted the sanction, the same sanction of the United States, almost the same sanction of the United States, because of the choice that the new world strategy obliges any country in the world. This is, you know, this is also, this is a global choice. And so middle power are increasing in economic presence, in the technological role, but now I cannot say that they are autonomous in the political choices.
Well, thank you very much. And my last, not a question, is a small friendly request. Your wishes to this conference and to Republic of Armenia and to Armenians worldwide, including Armenians that live in Italy as well.
Look, Armenians, thanks God, are experts of any country of the world, and they have an experience even in my own country, and they know many of them. This is because of history, as everybody knows, some bad aspect of history, but some good aspect of history, the intelligence and the ability of your people to give an interpretation of the new world. Clearly, the problem of Armenia, of all the countries in the area, is how to survive and balance being in the middle of the fractures of the world. It's look from Central Asia to Caucasus to the Balkans. It's you never have stability, and so will not be easy also for the future to guarantee this stability. But personally, I do think that to have a stronger relation with Europe because of the cultural traditions, because of also because of your presence here could be a contribution to the strength and the stability of the country. Of course, you cannot transfer the geographical position of Armenia, but to balance and to increase strong links with us will be some sort of, let's say, better guarantee. Clearly, I was honest to describe the weakness of Europe, but step by step, we are really, we did it in the economic field, we are working to do in the political field. Step by step, we are building Europe, and the destiny of Armenia is to be more and more linked to us. Not a total guarantee, but an increase of your independence and, let's say, balancing role in the area. This is what I think.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President. Well, thank you for your thoughts. Of course, this is Summit of Minds, and we'll hear other thoughts as well, and other wishes for Armenia as well. And that's the beauty of this summit, but that we can hear all possible thoughts from friends. We went through difficult times last year, and when you are through difficult times, it's easier to find who are your friends, who are not. But this is our destiny. But it remains to me, Mr. President, to thank you for your contribution to our summit, to thank President, Prime Minister, Minister, but for me personally, the most important, professor, eminent professor of Bologna University as well. Thank you very much. And have a good morning, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you so much to everybody of you. Bye-bye. Thank you.